Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the County Council meeting taking place on Wednesday, the 25th of September 2024. This meeting is being broadcast live to our YouTube channel. Before we commence with today's formal business, could I ask everyone in the chamber to switch off or make silent their mobile phones and any other electrical devices, please? Before we move to the business on the agenda, I would like to remind you of the housekeeping rules for the meeting. Once invited to speak, please stand up and face forward and switch on the closest microphone to you. Some members may be aware that we have encountered some issues with the microphones recently. They have been tested and successfully used on a number of times since the issue occurred. However, could I ask that if you need to adjust the position of the microphone, please do so, but if you can do this whilst the microphone is switched off, thank you. If you encounter any problems with your voting handset, please raise your handset in the air and a member of committee services will assist. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the members of the public attending the meeting. You are very welcome to attend and observe proceedings. However, I request politely that you do not disrupt the meeting. One final important reminder: there is no planned fire drill this morning. However, in the event of an alarm sounding, please exit the building via the main reception and head right and walk towards the assembly point, which is the flat car park towards the ranks. The usual assembly point is not accessible at the current time. Colleagues, it is my sad duty to formally report the death of former Councillor Ronald Dodd and Peter Harker. Ronald represented the Tanfield Ward on Downside District Council from 1973 to 1989. He was also an honorary alderman. Peter Harker was a former councillor on Wear Valley District Council. He served 2 separate terms of office representing the St Helens Auckland Ward from 1995 to 1999 and the West Auckland Ward from 2003 to 2007. Can I ask the councillors to stand with me for a moment's silence? Thank you. We move on to item 1, the minutes. Can I have a mover? Amanda?
Yeah, Chair, can I move the minutes, please?
Second the minutes, Chair.
Are the minutes agreed? Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare an interest in relation to any item of business on the agenda? No. Thank you. Members, as always, can I remind everyone that we are respectful to each other during the meeting. Robust debate is part of the democratic process, but I would ask members to respect the views of others and not to point fingers during debate. I would also remind members that it is not appropriate to shout at other councillors across the floor during debate. Please use the microphones when speaking. Where points of order are raised, once a ruling has been made on advice of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services, it will not be revisited. Colleagues, earlier on this year, I joined with the children of Castleside Primary School to view the premiere of a short film based on Concert Steelworks. The film was a collaboration with Digital Voice as part of a Heritage Lottery Fund project, which invited stories from people who remembered the works. Children across the school then worked to learn new digital skills as well as learn about their heritage. I will be showing the film today at the conclusion of the meeting. It lasts about 11 minutes. My final announcement this morning relates to my previous year in office. At the end of the civic year, it always takes a few months for final charitable donations to filter through. The final total was made available over the summer recess, and it gives me great pleasure to announce that the total raised for the charities for 23-24 civic year amounted to £5,252.28. This amount has been shared between my two chosen charities for 23-24, the Durham Association of Boys and Girls Clubs and the Alzheimer's Society. I would like to thank everyone who contributed to all the civic events held through the year. We move on to item 4, the Leader's Report. Can I invite the Leader of Council to present her report?
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on raising that amount of money last year for charity. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first full council meeting since the summer recess. I hope the break provided you all with an opportunity to recharge your batteries before a busy autumn and winter ahead. September has already got off to a flying start with the 20th anniversary of Net Park. From a bold vision developed and delivered in partnership, Net Park has established itself as one of the UK's leading science, engineering and technology parks. It is currently home to more than 40 pioneering companies employing more than 700 people. And these companies are developing cutting-edge products that help people to live healthier lives, keep people safe, generate sustainable energy and much more. The £100 million Phase 3 extension is now underway, and we are delighted when the leading tech firm Filtronic signed up as its first tenant earlier this month. September also means the start of the new academic year, and this year we have been proud to pilot a scheme that automatically enrolls eligible families to receive free school meals. We all know how important it is for children to receive a nutritious and satisfying lunch, and thanks to this scheme, nearly 2,500 children will get a free school meal in County Durham in 2024-25. This will save each family an average of £400 a year on food costs, and I'd like to place on record my thanks to Councillor Alan Shield and the teams involved in the pilot of this important initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions on the report? No more questions. Can I ask the Council to note the report? Thank you. Item 5, questions from the public. There are no questions for today's meeting. Item 6, petitions. There are no petitions for today's meeting. Item 7, the report from the Cabinet. Can I ask the Leader of the Council to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Present the report as tabled in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. There have been no questions received in respect of the report. Can I ask the Council to note the report? Thank you. We move on to item 8, the Local Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2025-2026. Can I ask the Corporate Director of Resources to present the report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The National Council Tax Benefit Scheme was abolished in March 2013 and replaced with the requirement for each individual local authority to develop and adopt their own local council tax reduction scheme. This report sets out proposals for the local council tax reduction scheme that will apply next year in County Durham. Pensioners who in 2013-14 accounted for 47% of the overall caseload, but who now only account for 38% of the caseload, must be fully protected under any local scheme. However, the Council is free to determine locally any cap we wish to place on support to working age claimants. Any changes to our scheme from year to year must be subject to public and stakeholder consultation. When the schemes were first introduced, the government cut the grant funding to local authorities and effectively passed on all the risk from increased incidence of claims to local government. Many authorities sought to offset the grant loss at that time or subsequent reductions in funding by capping the maximum amount of support available to working age claimants. All councils who are responsible for these schemes provide some element of support, and all schemes are means tested. For 2013-14, the first year of the new arrangements, this council took the decision to implement a local scheme that mirrored the entitlement afforded under the previous National Council Tax Benefit Scheme. And in each year since, Council have agreed to retain and extend this protection. Whilst two other authorities in our region now, Stockton and Newcastle, have amended their schemes in recent years to provide up to 100% support to working age claimants in certain circumstances, our council is one of only a handful of councils in the country to continue to provide the same level of support that existed under the National Council Tax Benefit Scheme, with around 80% of all of working age claimants currently receiving 100% support and having no council tax to pay. In total, around 41,000 of the 53,800 recipients of council tax support receive 100% support. Last week, the Cabinet considered an update to our MTFP projections and also considered whether to submit proposals to full council to change the council tax reduction scheme next year. The recommendation of Cabinet was to continue with the existing scheme for at least a further year, and this report seeks to do that. In arriving at that decision, the Cabinet were mindful of the costs of recovery and the potential impact on collection rates should we change the scheme, as well as both the cumulative impacts of the previous government's welfare reform agenda and the cost of living pressures all households are facing, which has a bigger impact on our most disadvantaged households. The recommendations are for Council to agree the extension of the scheme into next year, and in doing so, commit to undertaking a further review next year to inform options for 2026-27. The recommendations are set out at paragraph 14 in the report, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a mover to the report? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Corporate Director for his clear explanation of the report, where the Cabinet's recommendation to Council is that once again the scheme remains unchanged next year. In agreeing these proposals, which I hope get support across the county, I would note that we are the only council in the North East to have a scheme that continues to provide support equal to that which was available under the old council tax benefit scheme. And I think we should be proud as a council that we continue to support what is such an important benefit for vulnerable people across this county. We must, however, recognise that this decision comes at a cost in terms of lost council tax revenues, in terms of working age households, compared with virtually every other council in the country. The total cost of the local council tax reduction scheme is around 67 million, with 38% of the 53,800 caseload being pensioners who must be protected in any event. Support to pensioners is around 25 million, whereas support provided to working age claimants is around 42 million, with around 83% of working age claimants receiving the maximum level of support currently and having no bill to pay. We will, however, need to review this position in a year's time, particularly if there is no additional funding provided by the new government to help us balance our budget. Cabinet heard last week that we face a deficit of over £20 million in the year 25-26 and over £60 million over the MTFP period. We continue to reflect also on the administrative burden created through multiple changes in circumstances for those households on universal credit. Put simply, unless we receive more funding from central government, this may well be the last year we can afford the current scheme. But with that Caveat, Chair, I fully support the recommendations as set out in the report and call on all members to agree retaining the scheme next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a second to the report, Councillor Shield?
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to thank the officers and Councillor Richard Bell for this report, and I'd like to pay tribute to the staff who administer this scheme and who work tirelessly to support our vulnerable people. Last week in Cabinet, we considered the Q1 performance report, which showed that we are processing new claims for council tax reduction within 15 days and changes in circumstances within 6 days, well within our targets and on par with the best performers and much better than most other councils. This has been mentioned. The local council tax reduction scheme is forecast to be circa £67 million in 24-25. 25 million equates to approximately 20,000 claimants of pensionable age, and 42 million of this relates to approximately 33,500 claimants of working age. All members, past and present, can be proud that this council has been able to retain a local council tax reduction scheme that retains support to the vulnerable and disadvantaged households equal to that was available under the old council tax benefit scheme. As has been previously outlined, we are one of only a handful of councils across the country, and despite 2 other councils in our region now providing up to 100% support in certain circumstances, we are the only authority in the North East continuing to retain a local council tax reduction scheme at the same level as was the case under the former National Council Tax Benefit Scheme. The level of protection afforded to working age claimants, many of which, some 6,000 households who are in work but suffering from low wages, is ongoing, as all these households will continue to face the squeeze on household incomes. We need to be extremely proud to be one of the few local authorities in the UK to offer full local council tax reduction. However, we need to acknowledge and appreciate the ongoing severe financial issues affecting County Durham and Durham County Council.
1 minute, Councillor Shield.
And I echo the comments made by Councillor Bell that we need carefully to consider our positions, and the incumbent administration following the May 2025 elections will need to assess the financial capability of maintaining this essential benefit support to all sectors of our society. However, now is not the time to consider making radical changes to our scheme, and I call upon all members of all sides to agree the proposals as previously set out and formally second the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shield. Before I invite speeches, are there any questions on the report? Councillor Mark Wilkes.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. When trying to balance budgets in difficult financial circumstances, one of the key things that any elected body must do is protect the most vulnerable, whether a local council or a government. We're protecting the most vulnerable, including pensioners, and we expect the government to do the same. Sadly, it's becoming clear they don't agree. We can only hope they change the direction if we are to continue to provide quality services and provide these protections. I support the recommendations in this report to protect our poorest residents, and I urge the government to properly fund local councils so we can continue to do so in future years. Thank you, Chair.
Is there anyone else wishes to speak? Can I ask the Council to agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you. We move on to item 9 has been deferred, so we move on to item 10. Item 10, zero tolerance to abuse policy. Can I ask the Director of Legal and Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer to present the report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Members will recall that in January 2023, the Council signed up to the Local Government Association's Debate Not Hate campaign. Since then, the Standards Committee has continued to receive regular updates in relation to the campaign, with a view to ensuring that the Council's arrangements for tackling abuse towards members and officers remain up to date and reflective of best practice. In June 2023, and not 2022 as referred into the exec summary, the LGA published a report titled Debate Not Hate, Ending Abuse in Public Life for Councillors, which identified 3 challenges. Firstly, councillors feel vulnerable to abuse and ill-equipped or supported to handle it. Secondly, a lack of clear processes for reporting incidents. And thirdly, uneven engagement or response from the police. In response to the findings, the LGA proposed 5 guiding principles to assist councils to deal with abuse effectively, and they are set out at paragraph 12 in the report. Paragraph 13 sets out the arrangements that the council already had in place which met principles 2 to 5. And the only principle where there was a gap was principle 1, and that's the zero tolerance approach to abuse. Accordingly, the Standards Committee requested that officers prepare a draft zero tolerance to abuse policy, which is appended at Appendix 3 to the report. The draft policy is intended to serve as a reminder to the Council's commitment to the Debate Not Hate campaign and sets out the Council's expectations for interactions between elected members, employees and members of the public. It's intended to cover all forms of communications, whether that's verbal, written or on social media, and has been drafted to complement existing policies and procedures. The policy is broken down into 6 headings, which is summarised at paragraph 18 of the report, and includes examples of what might constitute unacceptable behaviour, as well as an outline of how incidents should be reported and what action the Council may take in response. In preparing the document, relevant services have been consulted to ensure that the policy is consistent with existing policies and procedures, and the policy was also shared with trade unions, with the comments back being in support of the policy. Prior to the report being presented to Standards Committee on the 6th of September, it was also considered by the Constitution Working Group, who were supportive. Standards Committee resolved to recommend that Council adopts the zero tolerance approach to abuse policy, and requested that it's circulated to all members and employees, published on the Council's website and on the members' portal, as well as included in the new members' handbook for May 2025. And Chair, that resolution is set out in the recommendations to the report. Thank you.
Can I have a mover to the report? Catherine Rooney.
Thank you, Chair. The Council already has excellent arrangements in place to deal with abuse and intimidation towards councillors effectively. Standards Committee were pleased to note that the Council met 4 out of the 5 guiding principles set out in the Local Government Association report, Debate Not Hate, Ending Abuse in Public Life for Councillors. Members may recall that we have previously reported that the Council's arrangements, in particular the social media toolkit, arrangements with the police and risk assessments in the event of incidents were highlighted by the LGA as best practice. The adoption of the zero tolerance approach to abuse policy will ensure that Council's arrangements fully reflect the LGA's recommended best practice. The policy has been drafted so that it is consistent with the Council's existing policies and procedures, such as the Member Employers Code of Conduct and Corporate Complaints Policy, and arrangements with dealing with habitual and vexatious complaints. The policy sets clear expectations of the standards of behaviour that we expect from interactions between members, officers and members of the public. It is unfortunate that abuse and intimidation faced by members and officers continues to rise, but the Standards Committee remain committed to ensure Council arrangements for dealing with such incidents remain up to date and reflective of best practice. I would like to thank the monitoring officer, her team and all of the officers involved preparing this policy, as well as providing support to councillors who experience abuse and intimidation. I move the recommendations.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder to the report? Councillor Richard Bell.
There is currently no document which sets out the Council's zero-tolerance approach to abuse, and this policy seeks to address that gap. Having signed up to the Debate Not Hate statement in January 23, it's important that the Council maintains its commitment to promote respectful debate and interactions between members, officers and the public. I therefore second the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I invite speeches, are there any questions on the report? Does any member wish to speak on the report? Can I ask the Council to agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you. We move on to item 11, Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report 2023-2024. Can I invite the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Management Board, Councillor Rob Croot, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present to Council this morning the Scrutiny Annual Report for 2023-24. The report sets out some of the work we've undertaken over the past year. As Chair of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Management Board and with Vice Chair Chris Lyons, we continue to implement the scrutiny process in accordance with the 4 principles of effective scrutiny. They are to provide a constructive, critical friend challenge, to amplify the voices and concerns of the public, to be led by independent-minded people who take responsibility for their role, and to drive improvement in public services. Our annual report reflects these 4 principles and underpin all the work we do. I'd like to give you just a few examples of the work we've covered over the last year. The Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Management Board scrutinised the Cabinet's MTFP proposals, and our comments were included in the final budget report to Council. As ever, this is a significant role and responsibility for the Board. The Adults Wellbeing and Health Scrutiny Committee, led by Councillor Ron Andrews, is engaged with our NHS colleagues in monitoring improvement actions as part of the CQC's inspection process, and have also been involved in the preparation and oversight of the Council's Adult Social Care Assurance Assessment Framework, also by the CQC. The Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee, chaired by Anne Reid, has examined those demands placed upon children's social care and the increasing demand for mental health and wellbeing support for children and young people, which has been evident more so since the COVID-19 pandemic. The Economy and Enterprise Committee, chaired by Councillor Bill Moist, continued its oversight of the Inclusive Economic Strategy Delivery Plan and demonstrated its policy formulation in contributing to both the County Durham Housing Strategy and the Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy. The Environment and Sustainable Communities OSC, chaired by Bev Coult, has continued to examine the Council's performance in delivering key actions to address the Ecological Emergency Declaration and the Climate Emergency Response Plan, the latest update of which was presented to Cabinet just last week. The Safer and Stronger Communities Committee, chaired by Councillor Phil Heaviside, has provided comment on the Safe Durham Partnership Plan Priorities Refresh and the County Durham and Darlington Fire and Rescue Services Community Risk Management Plan. I would also highlight the increasing amount of work undertaken by the Council scrutiny representatives at a regional level in respect of health services and also combined authority scrutiny. Members will be aware that in May this year, a new regional mayor in Kim McGuinness was elected and a North East Combined Authority Cabinet and Overview and Scrutiny Committee appointed. I would like to assure Council this morning that oversight of the role and functions of the NECA has been identified as a high priority as we move forward. Finally, I'd like to give my thanks to members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committees, the Chairs and Vice Chairs, the Co-op-Ds and Council officers and partners for their continued hard work and support throughout the year. Chair, that's just a brief overview of some of the work we've carried out over the last year, and there's more detail in the report which I present to Council this morning. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Croot. Before I invite speeches, are there any questions on the report? Does any member wish to speak on the report? Councillor Chris Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Chris Lyons, Sedgefield Division and Vice Chair of Scrutiny. Through the Chair, I would like to echo many of Councillor Croot's comments. The various Scrutiny Committees' work programmes have been comprehensive and varied. and have required a very busy schedule of formal meetings, informal briefings, workshops and site visits. I would like to add my thanks to all of the scrutiny officers who have guided members through this work, and to the other officers and representatives of external organisations who have attended meetings to make presentations and answer questions. I would also like to commend members and co-optees who sit on the scrutiny committees. In the main, the standard of discussion and debate has been excellent and undertaken in a collaborative, constructive manner, sometimes in sharp contrast to exchanges in this chamber. Collectively, committee members have explored numerous, often complex matters, and they've done it diligently and thoroughly, and it's been a privilege to be a part of that. The chairs and the vice chairs of the various committees and the board have, in my opinion, worked well together and have followed the correct principles of scrutiny, regardless of political background. I believe that the balance that we had during the year, whether achieved by design or not, was healthy for the scrutiny function in this council, and I hope that it endures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I ask the Council to receive and note the report? Thank you. We move on to item 12, County Durham Youth Justice Service, the Youth Justice Plan 2024-2025. Can I invite the Head of Early Help, Inclusion and Vulnerable Children to present the report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. This report covers the updated Youth Justice Plan, highlights some key points about the service and the main priorities for the year ahead. As members may recall from previous years, producing a Youth Justice Plan is a statutory requirement for us, and it's a condition of the grant that we receive each year from the Youth Justice Board. Some of the key points about the work of the service are about performance. This is measured against some nationally set measures, and we have noted at paragraph 4 in the report the latest published data. The landscape over the last couple of years, post-COVID pandemic restrictions, has presented some really significant challenges to us. Of particular note, last year there was a really significant increase in the number of first-time entrants, especially young people offending for the first time that had no prior engagement with any of our services. This is something we're doing targeted work on with our partners, especially police colleagues, to better understand this and how we can work differently together to try and reduce that number. The number of young people with custodial sentences does tend to fluctuate from year to year, and last year we did see a significant number of young people with custodial sentences, a total of 18 young people. On each occasion a young person is sentenced to custody, the work of the service is reviewed to ensure that all appropriate work was undertaken and any lessons can be learnt for any future cases. Despite the figures showing a higher number of first-time entrants and higher use of custody last year, overall there was a slight decrease in both the total number of young people offending and the total number of offences committed compared to the year before. We continue to try and do a lot of work with victims of crime, both young people and adults, and over the year we did restorative work with over 150 people, and at any time we have around 35 young people involved with our support group for young victims of crime. We have increased our reparation work this year, and young people who have offended have done over 2,100 hours of unpaid work in communities across County Durham. Within the plan, we have set out our service improvement priorities for the year ahead. These include reviewing and developing our out-of-court processes, working more closely with our early help services, working with our partners to implement specific plans in relation to first-time entrants and the use of custody, reviewing and enhancing health provision, following on from a really comprehensive health needs assessment that we've completed. Through the work of the service, we also seek to ensure we hear the voices of children and families. We've sought to include some brief examples of this within the plan itself to try and indicate the impact and breadth of the service. And finally, members, we're aware that the detail of how the service works and the range of interventions we offer isn't always very well known to many elected members. We're therefore arranging a session for members to come and visit the service in the next month or so, and I'll send more details around that shortly. And then turning to the recommendation, Chair, Council is requested to note the contents of the report and receive the Youth Justice Plan for 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I invite speeches, are there any questions on the report? No questions. Does any member wish to speak on the report? Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this updated Youth Justice Plan for the county. The past year has seen the Youth Justice Service operating within more challenging circumstances as detailed in the report. The Youth Justice Service relies on close multi-agency working arrangements and support from a range of dedicated staff and volunteers, and I would like to thank them for all their ongoing work with young people and those affected by youth crime. The plan for the year ahead provides a clear pathway towards the improvements we all want to see, both for young people and the communities in which they live. I am therefore confident that the plans, as laid out in the document, will produce the outcomes we all want, and Chair, I support the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Denali.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Stacey Jean, Lee Blackhall's division. I would like to thank Martin Stenton for presenting the report today, and I would like to thank Dave Summers and his staff for the amazing work and the support that they give the children and young people. The plan is very thorough and demonstrates how the service will address the challenges that it faces to ensure a child-first approach is taken. However, I feel that it does not do justice to the work that is carried out within the service. I recently visited the Youth Justice Service and was amazed and moved by the work that the staff do. Through listening to stories around anonymised children, it was clear that all of the staff had the best interests of the children at heart and saw the children as children. The staff demonstrated understanding and genuinely cared about the children and young people that they worked with. They were persistent and didn't let any children or young people fall through gaps. It was a very emotional visit, and it was clear that the work that had been done had a significant impact upon those children who had offended, but also those who had been victims of crime. This excellent work is demonstrated through the service having been nationally recognised for their Youth in Mind group for young victims and for their speech and language and communication resources that are used nationally. It is important to point out that many children who have offended have previously been victims of crime themselves, and that many children and young people who enter the service have special educational needs and often have not had their health needs recognised. It is fair to say that the Youth Justice Service not only face challenges due to the lack of funding to their service, but also receive a negative impact through the challenges that other services face, such as CAMHS waiting lists and the lack of funding in education for children with special educational needs and disabilities. It is evident that our services have been starved of the funding that is so sorely needed, and it is absolutely amazing that the staff within the services have been able to carry out such fantastic, impactful work. As a council, we need to look to our newly elected Labour government to review the funding for services such as this to ensure that these services and services that can provide support and intervention can continue their positive work and support in achieving the best for our children and young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. There is no one else registered. Can I ask the Council to note and receive the annual report? Thank you. We move on to item 13, request for dispensation. Can I ask the Director of Legal and Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Under Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972, where a member fails to attend any meeting of the authority for a period of 6 consecutive months, then subject to certain exceptions, they cease to be a member of the authority unless that failure has been approved by Council before the expiry of 6 months. Due to a period of ill health, Councillor Gordon Binney of the Tanfield Division has been unable to attend any meetings of the authority since the 27th of March, and 6 months will expire on the 26th of September. In the circumstances, as monitoring officer, I consider it appropriate to grant Councillor Binney a dispensation, but it falls to Council to approve such dispensation. and therefore, Chair, the recommendation at paragraph 3 is for Council to approve that request for dispensation under section 85(1) of the Local Government Act 1972.
Thank you. Can I have a mover to the report? Councillor Deanley.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move the report for the special dispensation for Gordon Binney, and I would like to send my well wishes. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder to the report?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to formally second the report.
Thank you.
Send our best wishes to the family.
Thank you. Before I invite speeches, are there any questions on the report? Does any member wish to speak on the report? Can I ask the Council to agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you. We move on to item 14, motions on notice. We have 2 motions for today's meeting. Both motions are set out on the agenda and will be displayed on the screen at the relevant time. Can I ask the Director of Legal and Democratic Services to outline the procedure, please?
Thank you, Chair. The usual rules of debate apply. So movers of motions will have 5 minutes to speak, and seconders and other speakers will have 3 minutes. Members may only speak once on a motion other than the mover, who has a 3-minute right of reply. If an amendment is moved and seconded, the debate is on that amendment, and only one amendment may be moved and discussed at any one time. No further amendments can be moved until the amendment under discussion has been dealt with. Each member can speak once on an amendment, except for the mover of the original motion, who has a 3-minute right of reply, but may not otherwise speak on it. If, following the vote, an amendment is carried, it becomes a substantive motion. And as we have done previously, if there is an amendment, we will show it on screen, and it will also be circulated to members via email. 15 minutes before the expiry of the time limit for consideration of motions, the Chair will advise that there are 15 minutes left. At that point, no further registrations to speak will be accepted. Those already registered to speak will be invited to speak in the order that they registered until the expiry of the time limit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Mark Wilkes to move his motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. It'll be displayed shortly, I imagine. Chair, I brought this motion to full council because I'm horrified by the government's decision to take money away from our most vulnerable residents. No one can surely believe that there aren't better choices, because that's what this comes down to, a choice. The government is spending £1 trillion a year. The money saved from this decision is less than £1.25 per £1,000 they spend, and a lot of people are saying it'll actually not save any money at all. But the impact is significant. Over 10 million retired people losing up to £300. In County Durham, nearly 90,000 pensioners impacted. Many of those pensioners are on very low incomes and not entitled to pension credit. Many more entitled to pension credit don't claim it, maybe because of 240 questions or that perceived stigma of claiming benefits after a lifetime of working. To take away £300 from someone whose annual income is less than £12,000 is not only unforgivable and profoundly unfair, it's also economically illiterate. The government has not done a formal risk assessment of the policy, which itself is unacceptable, but the Labour Party did do its own assessment of means testing the winter fuel allowance. 3,850 deaths. That in itself is shocking. A government that knowingly imposes a policy that will kill thousands and fails to carry out due diligence on it opens themselves up to some very serious allegations. But it goes further than this, because in one foul swoop, they've scared the living daylights out of millions of elderly residents who are now even more likely to not turn on the heating. And that will not only risk thousands of deaths, but tens of thousands of additional hospital admissions. Think of the additional cost of this. Cancelling out all those savings. This is a political choice. There are other ways to raise tax. Capital gains tax changes, sorting out tax evasion. Here's a thought. How much does Amazon depot at Boburn pay per square metre for business rates? £24. And the co-op down the road in Coxo, £63. And a business at the Arneson Centre in Durham, £112. So a multinational company selling direct to the public is paying up to 5 times less business rates per square metre than the shops we walk into. Now, business rates are not a perfect tax, but why can't the government get a company worth $2 trillion to pay the same tax as a co-op in one of our villages, instead of taking £300 off a 90-year-old great-grandma living below the poverty line? Then there are the companies selling direct to consumers from China, like Shein, who pay no import duties, no VAT, no business rates and no national insurance, despite selling clothes direct to British consumers. Prime Minister Starmani should concentrate on fixing this tax avoidance instead of claiming freebie clothes and robbing our pensioners. As a council, we make tough choices, deciding to protect the most vulnerable. We've just seen that. We protect those that are below the poverty line from council tax. That's a choice. As the government is failing to make the right decisions, we must step up, which is why our motion calls on the council to promote signing up to benefits, and I'm sure Councillor Shield will outline the proactive work we've already started. But we need to send the strongest message possible to the government that scrapping the winter fuel payment is an unnecessary choice which will impact massively on our residents. After just a few months in power, Labour are creating their very own cost of living crisis, not born from war or pandemic or necessity, but from a cynical attack on our most vulnerable residents. Please support this motion and tell this Labour government to reverse its decision to rob 90,000 of our pensioners of their winter fuel allowance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. The motion requires a seconder. Councillor Luke Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. I rise to second this motion because, frankly, Labour's decision to end the winter fuel payment is nothing short of an outright betrayal of our pensioners. Here in County Durham, 89,275 pensioners will be financially worse off due to this heartless decision. While Labour prioritises pay rises for train drivers, who already get over £65,000 a year. The people of this county can see the truth, Chair. Labour is snatching away winter fuel payments from the most vulnerable to line the pockets of their public sector union paymasters. It is an absolute disgrace. But let's talk about what Sir Flip-Flop doesn't want the public to know. Before they even announced this policy, there was already a 14-week waiting time for pension credit applications to be reviewed. 14 weeks. With winter just around the corner, how on earth do they expect pensioners, many of whom aren't aware they need to apply for pension credit now, to navigate this slow, bureaucratic mess in time to receive their support? The reality is they won't, and they know it, but they just don't care. And the consequences are deadly. Labour's own analysis shows that up to 4,000 pensioners could die this winter as a result of their decision. 4,000 preventable deaths, all because Labour would rather pander to union demands than protect our elderly. Chair, it's clear to me and to every resident in this county that Labour is focused on one thing, that is bowing down and grovelling at the knees of their public sector trade union paymasters. They're the party of woke Britain, but we on this side are on the side of working Britain. We will not stand by while nearly 90,000 pensioners in our county are pushed into fuel poverty. So I urge every member of this council to support the motion, demand this decision to be reversed, protect our pensioners from Labour's cruelty, and show the people of County Durham that there is a party willing to stand up for them. But, Chair, it's not Labour. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind us all, the language that we use in this chamber reflects who and what we are. Does any member wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Rob Crute.
Chair, I indicated I wanted to speak before the motion was proposed, and that was to withdraw the second motion because of the similarity between the two motions on the paper this morning.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Richard Bell.
Thank you, Chair. This cutback on pensions puzzles me when I look at the numbers, because cutting the Winterfields payment reduces the number of claimants from around 11.5 million to 1.5 million, saving an estimated £1.3 billion this winter. And the government says, don't worry, because if all the pensioners eligible to claim pension credit do so, they'll be fine. That's an estimated 1 million pensioners who could claim that, and currently don't, and if they did, it would cost an estimated £4 billion. Never mind the additional costs for the NHS, etc., as Councillor Wilkes mentioned. So if people do what the government says, it'll cost at least £2.7 billion more. So why would the Chancellor be saying that if the sums don't add up? Well, not all of those pensioners eligible will claim, of course. And even if they do, it can take many months to process a claim. Between 3 and 6 months is common, due in large part to understaffing in the Department of Work and Pensions. So if those figures are correct, either Rachel Reeves has not done a very good assessment of this proposal, or the government are being cynical in encouraging pensioners to claim in the full knowledge that they won't get the money in time for winter. Neither incompetence nor cynicism is a good look from a government. I therefore urge Council to support the motion and register in the strongest terms our objection to this damaging cutback on our pensioners.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fraser-Tinsley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to rise to amend the motion. It's clear that Councillor Wilkes and Councillor Holmes are very concerned about this matter. So are we. We're concerned about a lot of other things as well. We're concerned about the fact that child poverty in this county is at record levels. Our schools are crumbling. There's lack of investment in towns and villages. The buses don't run on time if they run at all. Food bank use is at record levels. That's for many people who are families and working people. The number of children who are looked after is soaring, and people across our communities, from young to old, will struggle to heat their homes this winter. And also I note that Councillor Wilkes identifies tax avoidance as a problem. I notice he says business rates are unfair. Councillor Bell says that the DWP are understaffed and they're unable to actually administer the issue of benefits. They are all things that have happened under 14 years of your control. You've allowed this situation to develop in County Durham. It's at your door, these problems that this is going to address. So to the motion. Yes, pensioners are going to be worse off, to some about £200 to £300, and that is a concern. But we must remember this is in a context where the triple lock will increase pensioners' income by £900 this year and £460 next year. That is the right thing to do. And there's another fact we must remember. We are not supporting others in society to the same extent that we have been supporting pensioners. And some would say we know why that is. Many pensioners do not need this payment. Don't believe me? Ask them yourselves. Many of that 89,000 just don't need it. They're in a comfortable position, and good for them. But what we need to do is remember that there is a 22 billion black hole being left by the parties opposite. The other thing is that many who do need this money will continue to receive it. The most vulnerable, as referred to. Yes, those on pension credit. But there are some above the threshold who will be affected more than others. But how do you actually get the money to them while not giving it to those who don't need it? There are many in society who are very vulnerable, who do need this money more than those pensioners that don't. That's the problem here. So why the amendment? I'm concerned about the impact on pensioners day to day. I'm not concerned about political point scoring, and you know a lot of people out there are the same. The key issue is how we get this money to pensioners. A blame game, so what? If you want to get into that, we can start doing that after 14 years of evidence that's being provided. Okay, so this takes me to the second point. Let's write to the government. Now, I've been a councillor for 10 years, and we've written umpteen letters to the government. Do we even get a reply to a lot of them? I'm sure it is going to change with the new Labour government. And they are going to engage because they care more about society and communities like ours. And they will come back to us in this. But the key thing is we must engage now, do practical measures now that are going to help our people in this area. So let's focus on what we can do, and let's do what people care about. Let's ask Cabinet to get a campaign that connects with a government campaign to get the uptake on pension credit people, those 880,000 who are eligible are and claiming there are many in this county, to get them the money that they need. It's a practical measure that makes a difference now, and it is not politically grandstanding like what is occurring from the other side. It's a mess, this country, and that's at your door. Thank you, Chair.
We need a seconder to the amendment. Councillor Crute.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Fraser's amendment. And whilst acknowledging the general concerns and sentiments expressed in the motion, what we can't support are the actions proposed in the final section. And that's because they simply don't go far enough in addressing those concerns. Anyone watching this debate this morning is going to expect something a bit more robust than simply writing a letter. What's needed is dialogue with government ministers and an immediate coordinated response from this council, not performative hand-wringing from a coalition that sat back in silence while their governments used years of austerity to bring our council budgets and public services to the brink of collapse. Those same cuts, alongside reckless mismanagement of the national economy that sent interest rates soaring through the roof just 2 years ago, have brought us to the point we're at today. Writing a letter simply doesn't cut it. Writing a letter won't reverse the catastrophic impact of successive governments pandering to wealth and privilege while the rest of us are left behind. What we need is direct, practical action, and that's exactly what this amendment demands. Chair, people watching the debate this morning are likely to question the motives of the coalition in tabling this motion. Whilst we've been in opposition for the past 3.5 years, we've given the coalition plenty of opportunities to support us in kicking back against Tory government excess. We got nothing in return. In fact, 3 years ago this week, we tabled a motion in this room condemning the Tory government's proposal to remove £20 each week from universal credit claimants. That's £1,000 each year, snatched away from vulnerable families and children. Indeed, heartless, unforgivable and profoundly unfair. What we got in return from the coalition members at the time is pretty much mirrored in their motion this morning, and the impact's guaranteed to be the same. And never forget, we are where we are today because past Tory governments have failed us. What we need to do now, though, is open up dialogue with decision makers, not simply write a letter, then pat ourselves on the back and kid ourselves that we've done the best we can.
1 minute, Councillor.
People of County Durham expect a more animated response from their local councillors, not performative claptrap designed to catch the headlines or pick up a few clicks on social media posts. So write your letter if you think it'll make a difference. But we'll not be playing along with any party political games at a time when we should be focused entirely on solutions. We need immediate and effective measures. Members on this side of the aisle have already begun that process. So this morning, we will not be taking a step backwards to support this motion. The people we represent deserve much better than empty rhetoric from a coalition that barely lifted a finger in defence of the hard-pressed people of this county. We are not falling for this sham of a motion, and neither should anybody else. So I urge all members this morning to support this amendment, put away your pens and join us in actually doing something. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. There are 15 minutes left for the debate. We have 13 councillors registered to speak. No further registration to speak will be accepted. We will invite those registered to speak until the time expires. We will then look to wrap the debate up. Councillor Quinn, you were registered to speak before the amendment was moved. Do you wish to speak on the amendment?
Which Councillor Quinn?
Joe Quinn, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad Councillor Fraser Tinsley brings up the triple lock, which was a Conservative policy. You're right, it is a good policy and it is in place for now anyway. I don't know where Councillor Tinsley is from, but where I'm from, there are many pensioners that need this lifeline. Let's not forget, the threshold for pension credit is £218 a week. Hardly well off, is it? Let's also not forget the older generation are a proud generation. Lots of them simply will not claim benefits regardless of their entitlement. I cannot support this amendment.
Councillor Richard Ormerod.
Thank you, Chair. I can't say that I ever had high expectations of this government, but I didn't expect it to be worse than the one it replaced. I didn't vote for him, but I did think that Keir Starmer might be a decent Prime Minister. I was particularly impressed with his efforts to modernise the party and to demonstrate that anti-Jewish racism has no place in a mainstream party. But, Madam Chairman, what a disaster it's been. Less than 3 months in, we've already had riots in the streets, violent prisoners cracking champagne to celebrate early release, and millionaire politicians accepting gifts to pay for their clothes. And now this. By their own admission, Labour know this policy will lead to 4,000 deaths a year. 4,000 deaths for a policy that will save nothing. It'll ramp up costs for the NHS and care services. Every hospitalisation for hypothermia costs the NHS and care services an extra £20,000. When Margaret Thatcher stopped free school milk, she learned the lesson. It did huge damage to her reputation for a relatively small saving. Keir Starmer needs to learn that lesson, admit that he's got this wrong, and reverse this cruel, unnecessary policy. I don't see the point of the amendment because it just goes into a little more detail about what the original motion said anyway.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alan Shield.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make the first comment about the proposed motion from the opposition. Can I tell you that this side of the chamber has already started to do this? Approximately 3 months ago, 3 months, even when the Conservative government was still in power, we decided at a Poverty Action Steering Group meeting that there was a need to do a pension credit uptake within County Durham. So just for benefit's sake, pension credit is worth approximately £3,900 a year, but it's also a passported policy, a passported benefit to other benefits: housing benefit, local council tax reduction, NHS transport costs, free licences for the over 75s. And from winter, now, it's a qualifying criteria for the winter fuel election. So, we currently have some 20,250 local council tax claimants for pensions, of which 12,650 are already in pension credit. So we have targeted those people who are quite clearly eligible but haven't claimed. So using a range of data, we have identified over 2,000 residents who should qualify for pension credit but are clearly not in receipt. That's worth a circa £7.8 million in unclaimed benefits. So, members will get a letter today outlining what we have established. A letter will be sent out to all of those potential entitlements on Friday, identifying and providing support both by letter, by correspondence and by formal engagement. So that will be done because we are a proactive organisation. I don't need to be instructed by people how to run the benefits section. I've done it for over 20 years in my other role. Can I also say, Councillor Tinsley, I take umbrance at you stating that other people might not need it. I probably don't need it, but I don't use it either. I give that on a yearly basis to a local charity, as many other people do, and it's not right for you or any other person to make that comment. I also want to mention, basically, that I believe that this will have an effect on the economy. Because if you've got 89,275 eligible pensioners, and we know from the DWP, because we are engaging with them, that almost 15,000 are in receipt of pension credit, that leaves some 73,000, of which 2,000 will be addressed. But if you multiply that 72,000 by 250, an average of the 300 and 250, that's going to have an effect on the economy in County Durham by more than £15 million.
Time, Councillor Shield.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lucy Hovell.
Thank you, Chair. I don't often get on me feet to speak at set motions or amendments, but I just want to take us back. Can we all just go back a little bit? You know, we had the COVID, how much did that cost? Look what the government did with the money. You know, the fancy friends and the big fat cats got fatter. That's where the waste went, a lot of waste. And you can sit there, but you can all remember, you've seen it on the telly, you had it in your communities. And we supported our people. And I'm speaking as a councillor. I'm speaking at Durham County Council, I'm speaking in the chair bit. And it is...
Councillor Hovels. Councillor Hovels, just a second, I've got a point of order.
I followed the government's policy in... Sorry. Point of order.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't aimed at Councillor Hovels in particular, but this is aimed at people on both sides. The rules state that comments should be made through the Chair.
We've inherited a black hole. There's no doubt about it. We know, we've seen the problems that we have, and I'll refer back to the COVID, because that was a problem, and it was a costly problem, and that's contributed. I don't doubt that. But also, we've had other problems where we've had to support other initiatives across the county, and I pride myself, in all the years I've been a councillor, whichever council it may be, to serve the people. I think that's our job. I think the government inherited this problem. They'll put policies into place, doesn't matter which government it is and what colour. They'll put policies in place, but our job as a county council is to carry them policies out. And I believe this amendment will help us do that. And I take Councillor Shields' point, because I said, why hasn't? And I ask people, why haven't we brought all the different agencies, the ones that we support, to be able to support our people together? When we had the COVID, we had the big support units set up, and you may have used it, you may have not, you may remember, you may have forgot, but it was something that we did. And I'm saying, what can we do? That policy is now in place. We may not like it, but the government have made decisions, and our job is to support them. As a Labour member, I'll be doing that, and I'll be supporting, through the mechanisms that we've got, our local people. So this morning I'm voting for the amendment, Chair, and I would hope that people can see where I'm coming from, and I hope go in the same direction. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Eddie Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, while speaking in favour of the amendment, it would be remiss of me not to highlight the hypocrisy from the Lib Dem and Tory parties who now purport to support County Durham's vulnerable residents. They are the very people who took us into 14 years of austerity, closed thousands of Sure Start centres, stripping down basic benefits, slashed council funding, failed on levelling up, and even as late as in December 2023, they withdrew the Pensioner Cost of Living Fund. So therefore, Chair, where were the parties opposite criticising their government then? The country is in a mess, not because of the current government, but due to the mismanagement and failed Tory government. It is our role as a council and councillors to find the most practical and best ways to provide support and positive guidance to our vulnerable pensioners, rather than going on about protecting the more wealthy pensioners and who have the broadest shoulders and who will also continue to seek substantial increases in income due to the triple lock. Therefore, Chair, Our amendment is focused on protecting those pensioners, most in need, by ensuring that the Council's services are adequately funded, well organised and in a position to support voluntary organisations to deliver an effective awareness campaign to increase the uptake of pensioner credit, local council tax reduction scheme, the household support fund, warm home discount, managing money better. Therefore, Chair, I urge others to support this amendment because it makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alwyn Gunn.
Thank you, Chair. And please excuse my croaky voice, but I'll do my best on this. Can I first of all say I'm quite surprised that Councillor Shields is announcing that this is already happening, and that we, as councillors, have not had a briefing about this previously. So I'm quite surprised that this is only brought up here. I would like to say as well that I do believe that Councillor Wilkes and Councillor Holmes haven't just jumped on the bandwagon of hypocrisy, they're leading it. And that really, what we ought to be doing is trying very much to work together, because I'm so disappointed that really what is happening here is that this motion has been set up to just do political point scoring. How sad is that, when what we should be doing is working together to ensure that those pensioners who are not getting pension credit already, that they do. And our amendment, it clearly says, you can see it, immediately set up and fund a unit specifically to organise and run credit awareness campaign in conjunction with voluntary organisations in County Durham. That's what we wanted to do with you, the coalition. That's what we wanted to do with this. With this amendment, that's where we're coming from. All you have done so far is score political points over here. I think it's really quite despicable that you cannot come here and look at how we can work together for the benefit of all of the pensioners across our county. I'm supporting this amendment, Chair, and thank you. Sorry about the croaky voice.
Thank you, Councillor. We've reached the 30 minutes. Councillor Wilkes, would you like to give your right of reply to as the mover of the original motion?
Thank you, Chair. This is astounding, isn't it? We've got a motion which basically says, let the government, we've got an amendment which basically says, let the government just get on with cutting money from pensioners. I cannot believe that there are members of the Labour Party in this room who seem happy almost to go along with what the government's doing and take £300 off pensioners. I mean, Councillor Gunn, the motion actually asks us to work together, to write to the government to ask them to stop this. And it also already says, urgently commence a significant awareness campaign, which Councillor Shield has just said we're going to do. And we're doing. But all your motion basically says, this amendment is, well, do what we're doing and don't bother telling the government we're not happy that they're taking money from 89,275 pensioners in an economically illiterate plan which won't raise any money, will actually end up costing money. And you're all sat there supporting it, presumably because you're members of the Labour Party. Well, I'm sorry, but when a government does something wrong, it doesn't matter whether you're a member of that party or not. You stand up and you say it's wrong, just as thousands of your members have been doing in Liverpool this week. Yet it would seem that all of you here are only interested in not contacting the government, in not complaining about the government, which can only suggest that you all agree with what they're doing. Well, at the ballot box next year, when we all tell all of the residents out there that all of the councillors from the Labour Party in this county actually agree with cutting it...
Can we just stop for 2 seconds? It is disrespectful to the person who is speaking when you are speaking underneath. Please don't do it.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to finish off and just say that all that this does lets the government, this amendment just lets the government get away with what they're doing. I don't support this amendment. We should all vote for the existing original motion and tell this government that what it's doing is wrong. Why on earth can you guys not see that? I'm flabbergasted. Yes, and I'd like a name vote, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. Councillor Wilkes has requested a named vote. We'd need a second. Thank you. I'll hand over to Head of Legal and Democratic Services to direct us in the process.
Thank you, Chair. So that was a valid request for a named vote. So the way in which members vote will appear in the minutes for the meeting. We will shortly open the vote. The vote open will be signified by the usual buzzer. We are voting on the amendment moved by Councillor Tinsley. So if you're voting in favour, it's 1, 2 against and 3 to abstain. If you press the wrong button, pressing the right one will correct your vote. And if you've got problems with your handset, if you can raise it in the air, one of the team will come to you. Could I also ask that if anybody who was registered to speak before the expiry of the time limit didn't speak, can you come out the queue, please, so that we can set the vote up? Thank you.
We're closing the vote. So, councillors? Councillors? For the motion 34, against 57, for abstentions. The amendment falls. We go back to the substantive motion. As we are out of time, Councillor Wilkes, do you have anything to add before we go to the vote?
Chair, just to make sure we have a name vote on this as well, please.
It's the same process again. If you wait for the buzzer to sound, you're voting for the original substantive motion, and there will be a named vote, so the way in which you vote will appear in the minutes. It's 1 in favour, 2 against and 3 to abstain.
Councillors, we're closing the vote.
Sorry, Chair, as per previous... Oh, that was what I was about to ask for, we could see the list.
Councillors, for 59, against 8, abstentions 28. The motion is carried. Councillors, the second motion was withdrawn, so we move on to item 15. Questions from members. There are no questions for today's meeting. Councillors, that concludes today's business for the council meeting. I would like to thank everyone for taking part, and to those members of the public and media who have watched this meeting,